Hello everybody, welcome. We're going to be talking about some more aviation stuff here today. I'm going to be using my little helicopter here to do a little illustration on the current accident that just happened. I'm going to be covering the Cessna 310R accident, tail number November 252 Delta Lima. It was an IFR flight from Corzo Springs, Texas to Bridgeport Municipal Airport. Date of this accident was Sunday, January 14th, 2024. There were 3 fatalities in this accident. The pilot's name is Dr. Heath Smith, and his 2 small children were killed in this crash. The accident is suspected icing. We don't know yet, but taking a look at the flight profile, and I just want to tip my hat to Juan Brown at the Blanc O'Leary show. That good job on that. I can tell you right now, I think I know what happened. Anyways, they were doing a flight to this airport at 7,000 feet, and here's the big one. Juan Brown actually had the weather here for the destination airport. It was a -11 that day. That's pretty cold for Texas. 10 miles statue visibility and 3,000 feet overcast. So generally a VFR day. To me, that's a good VFR day. But icing was in the forecast. Not in the forecast. It was I think it was a pilot report and a METAR that came out indicating some icing conditions. So what I want to get into today is basically tell you private pilots out there, if you ever see icing in the forecast, or you find out there's icing up there in the sky, do not, I repeat, do not go flying into the cloud, because when you have minus temperatures in cloud, that's when you're going to get ice. Alright, so just keep that in mind. And the other thing is, when you have an autopilot in your airplane, do not fly around in ice with your autopilot on. And I'm just going to go over what happened here with this plane crash. After checking the flight profile from this doctor that was flying this 310 on that day, Juan Brown pointed out that his flight path was pretty much perfect right from the time he took off all the way to pretty much to his destination. I think it was about 20-30 miles away from his destination, and his descent profile was perfectly down, and he just kind of flew right into the ground. And I'm kind of in agreement with him that he was using his autopilot, because it was a pretty straight line. No deviations at all. It was like perfect. So that's a good indication his autopilot was on. Now the problem is, when you have an autopilot on and you're just sitting there not feeling the airplane, the autopilot will start to trim itself. And the reason for that is, when you're picking up ice, the airplane's not only getting heavier, because ice is heavy stuff. Remember, water's 8 pounds per gallon, right? So that's just big chunks of water frozen to your airplane there. But you're also going to get a thing on your tail too, and that's what they call tail plane icing. And that's what I think got this guy. So what happened was, he took off out of his airport there, got on the autopilot, used the autopilot to get to 7,000 feet, sat there for I don't know how long, let's say half hour to an hour. Then he used the autopilot to descend, started coming down. Meanwhile, he's picking up ice all this time, and his trim is trimming the nose forward. Because what's going to happen when you get a lot of ice on your airplane, especially on the tail, it's going to start to push the nose up. And then the autopilot's going to want to pitch the nose back down again, and then it uses trim. So, boy, this is looking pretty scary. So anyways, he's flying along with the autopilot at 7,000 feet, and then when he decides to come down, he uses the autopilot again to do his descent. And now he's coming down, picking up more ice. And then finally, he wants to level off now and pushes the altitude hold on his autopilot. That's what I think he did. And then when he did that, the autopilot either kicked off or basically wouldn't hold the altitude. And then as he was coming down, realizing that he couldn't level the airplane with the autopilot, that's when he finally disconnected the autopilot. By that time, the airplane is so heavily iced up, and the trim is full forward, that would explain his profile going straight in. But before he went straight in, Juan Brown brought up a good point. He went down to 1,200 feet, and then he went back up to 1,400 momentarily, and then crashed. So what that tells me is, as he was coming down with the autopilot, and he noticed that he wasn't leveling off, he disconnected it, and then grabbed the controls and noticed that it was really nose down. So he yanked back. By yanking back, he brought the nose up slightly, got a little bit of altitude, but since the plane was so iced up, it did what you call a high-speed stall and went in. That's what I think happened. The other thing too is when you get ice on your wings, not only does that ice create weight to your aircraft, but it also distorts the laminar airflow over your wings, and it starts to become turbulent. And we know now that that's how you get a stall, is turbulence over the wings. So that plane, let's just say that 310 stalls at, let's say, 90 knots. In that icing condition, it could stall up to about 125 knots or more. I don't know, I never tried it, and I don't plan on doing it. But you can have a high-speed stall, and that's what I think happened. He iced up, and he didn't realize, because he had the autopilot on, he should have been flying it by hand. Then you can feel the weight, and then you're manually trimming it up, right? Now you know something's up. And that's what I think happened. Ouch. But we won't know until the report comes out. But the best way to find out if this is true or not is when the report comes out and they find nothing wrong with the airplane, nothing wrong with the engines or anything, then it's got to be ice, because the ice melts away right after you crash pretty quickly. So if there's someone not there in right away after the crash and taking pictures of it, we're not going to know how much ice was on his plane. So, ouch. That was really terrible what happened there. So, my word of advice to all you private pilots out there, try not to use the autopilot all the time. Don't use it from point A to point B. Use the autopilot to do tasks inside the cockpit. It's an aid. It's not a chauffeur. It's an aid. So if you want to do some paperwork, read your approach plates, tune and ident radios, or just give your eyes a rest for a few minutes, by all means use the autopilot, but also suspect those things, because they do wonky things, autopilots. They really do. Don't trust them. And you should be hand flying. You should be feeling the airplane, stick and rudder, getting back to basics. All right? So that's what I think happened here. Death by autopilot and icing. And he didn't recognize it until it was too late. So anyways, yeah, wow. All right, well, I'm going to do another video here shortly, and what I'm going to do, I just want to put it on another video because this was pretty horrifying what happened here. What I'm going to do is, my next video that I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to set up your cockpit so you get all the junk out of there. So like no phones, no tablets, no books all over the windscreen, no charts all disorganized. You're going to have your flight planning done properly, so when you get in the plane, all you got is something that looks like this. Alright? Now all your charts and everything is all on board in your documents, but what you've done is to organize by doing what? Good flight planning. Good flight planning. You do it the night before. You don't do it while you're in the airplane. That's what it seems like sometimes here when I'm watching these YouTube videos. People pulling up data on their tablets while they're flying. I even saw a person on YouTube using their cell phone, an app, to look for traffic. Look for traffic? Just look out the window. You're in VFR weather. So I don't know, some of the things that are going on in cockpits are a huge distraction. We need to make that taboo. We need to get back to basics, basic flying, and organizing up our cockpits and keeping it simple. And awareness. You see people that go out and get twins with autopilots? Try to tell them not to use the autopilot too much. Tell them to use it when they need to use it. Tell them never to use it in icing conditions. Oh, and I do have a confession. Just give me a second here. Since I'm so benevolent. The reason why I'm being such a stickler with this Icing story right now, and the two kids getting killed because they were very young, and the guy was a doctor, looked like he was well respected, is because about 20 years ago I went for caravan training down at Flight Safety Miami. And I remember when we were there, the company that I was working for was more of a utility company, so they wanted Flight Safety to put more emphasis on emergency procedures and stuff like that than the actual IFR flying. And that was a good thing. And I remember they put me in the simulator, and me and this other pilot, he was the guy in the dunk school that I was talking about in my other video, he was there with me for that training course. Good fella. And we were kind of cocky. Me and this young guy, we were in our 20s at the time. And they put us through a scenario of icing in the caravan. And I remember when they iced me up, I was coming in for an approach on the simulator, and I crashed, and I think I was doing like 120 knots. So way above stall speed, and they really mounted up the ice. And I tell you, when they did that to me in the sim, I couldn't believe how the airplane just fell like a stone. And I went straight down, just like this guy's profile. So it kind of sends shivers through me. And the one thing that they did teach me at Flight Safety was when you're in a caravan, you disconnect the autopilot as soon as you're in icing conditions. And all the de-icing and anti-icing equipment that you got on a caravan, like boots and windscreen and all that stuff, that's only temporary. That's just enough to get rid of some icing, get out of there. All right? You don't stay in that ice long, because a caravan is nothing more than a brick once it gets iced up. I crashed the sim, so I should know so. It scared me too, actually, when I crashed the sim. It was my first time in a simulator in my life, actually, like a real one, full motion one. Yeah, it actually freaked me out like that dunk training school. So, word of the wise. But anyway, stay tuned for my next video. And I'm going to show you how to set up your cockpit and just go over a couple little things that you can do at home. And believe me, it's going to make your life a lot easier. Alright, I guess I had enough for today, and stay tuned for my next video. So long, everybody.